Good afternoon, tribe. I am so thankful that you're here with us today to chat with Becca and myself about our experiences in nursing school. To persevere and to never give up, that is our topic for today. Becca has been a nurse for 8 years. She was an LVN for 5.5, graduated with honors with her RN from Nightingale College and graduated with honors. Also with her BSN from Grand Canyon University. She's got tons of experience, ICU, LTAC, jail, even did a little bit of home health and traveled a little. So she has so much to teach us, and I'm super excited to chat with her. Your passion is in pediatrics and medical missions, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Do you have anything else that you would like to introduce yourself? I know you've got some fur babies. If you want to tell us anything special about yourself, that'd be great.
Yeah, so I'm kind of all over the place. I am the girl who loves Broadway musicals, and then I'm the guy's girl who wants to go to every sporting event I can go to. So I'm kind of all over the place. I grew up in Texas, so I love most Texas sports. College football is better than professional any day of the week. I'm a big UT fan, and then Texas Rangers baseball. I actually made this weekend with my mother, so that was fun.
Cool.
And then, yes, I have 4 dogs. I have 2 little ones who are Chihuahua mixes and then 2 big rescues. One's a full-bred Siberian Husky, and then I have a half lab, half shepherd.
That's awesome. I had a Husky Malamute cross several years ago. She is no longer with us, but her hair and the amount of shedding was crazy.
It's awful. My mom jokes every day we can make a new jacket or blanket or something sweeping it up. Yeah.
For real. It's true. So what attracted you to nursing?
Well, I try to think back on that. I actually, I think I fell in love mostly when I was a freshman in high school. My grandmother was my best friend, and she went through multiple heart attacks. And they lived in a small New Mexico, well, it's not really small, I guess, but to me it's small, New Mexico town. They lived in Carlsbad, and it's not necessarily the best healthcare. But she had a home health team, hospice team that came in and took care of her, and they could see how much passion I had for her. And I know it's the silliest little thing, but they had these like fancy feather stuffed toppers for the hospital bed so that they could be comfortable. And when she passed away, I refused to get off of it. I couldn't bring myself to get off of it. And so they actually let me keep that topper. And I ended up taking that with me to college, oddly enough. But it just, the compassion and everything they did for her and for me during that time, I knew I wanted to do something in medicine. At first, I thought I wanted to be a doctor, and then that didn't work out. My very first biology class, I said, nope, nursing it is.
That's awesome. So life's hard, and nursing school is challenging. And sometimes life and nursing school, they just don't cooperate with each other. Correct. So tell us a little bit about your difficult experience in nursing school.
Sure. So I actually did my CNA in high school. It was a class that they offered, and I did really well in that. I went to my first year of college thinking, like I said, I wanted to be a doctor, but then, of course, life gets in the way. And I said, well, maybe not. Maybe I just need to get prerequisites out of the way. I got offered a scholarship to go play softball at a different school, and that had an amazing nursing program. I was like, perfect. This is exactly right. So I transferred to that school, and the way that they handle their nursing program, you have to take fundamentals and health assessment before the actual program starts. Those are your like prerequisites, which was different.
Yeah.
And all through high school, I was a good student, never had to worry, never had to study. I grew up in a small town in Texas where most of your teachers were coaches and they didn't really care too much. So I enrolled in my first health assessment course my sophomore year of college, and I failed it by 2 points, I think. And so I was like, okay, well, I don't really know what I'm doing, and I'm very social, and that's what I cared about more than anything.
Okay.
with spending time with other people. So I had to wait a whole year to retake that because it wasn't offered every semester. So then I took it the following year, passed it, went to take the next class, and failed that one.
Oh. Had you developed, so during this first course where you failed by 2 points, did you develop a study group? Did you feel like your cohort were like your family yet, or not quite?
No, absolutely. It's funny because a couple of the people who were in my class that I was with were a part of my friendship circle that had just started before I ever even started the program. And so it was like, okay, this works because I know these people. But I felt like I knew the information, but I wasn't that person who would sit there and read my book and do all the extra studying. I studied in a group when we talked about it, and that was about the extent of my studying because I didn't know how. So I had that friendship, and luckily those friendships are still great. It didn't affect that, and I made more friends the next time around, of course. But the way that school functioned, you could not be accepted into their actual nursing program if you had failed twice. And so I had already failed twice, so I couldn't go on, which was frustrating. So I actually applied back in Carlsbad because I knew their program was much less competitive and I could potentially get into that. And the joke that my sisters have with me, if you've ever seen the movie Tommy Boy,
okay,
they will always say, yeah, it takes lots of people 10 years to go to college. They're called doctors, so that's the big joke, because this whole thing took so long because of little obstacles every turn. It felt like nothing was ever going to work. Yeah. I enrolled in that nursing school in Carlsbad, and the exact same thing happened. I took all those classes, and only one of the classes I failed by like a point or two. It was always very close. And I remember one time I was in with my instructor, and I told her, I said, I know this stuff. I was teaching the entire study group all of this information before we went into the test. I don't know why I can't pass the test.
Yeah.
And she actually took me in her office and pulled out the paper copy, gave it to me, said, read me the question, tell me your answer. I'm not going to help you. I just want you to read it and tell me what you think. I said, okay. So I read her the test. She circled the answers I gave her. And when I did that, I only missed 2 questions on the exam. But yet I failed it on the computer.
Okay, so your exams were all computer-based.
Correct.
Okay. So you were a more auditory, where you could read it on paper and verbally go through the answers as though you were teaching your clinical group or teaching
right.
study group.
Right.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So I'm one of those people who's very much like the people pleaser, which I'm sure most nurses are to some extent.
Right.
And when I kept starting and failing and starting and failing, I probably did that in Carlsbad 3 times, I want to say.
Okay.
My closest sister and my father both told me, maybe this isn't for you. Maybe you need to quit and give up and go be a teacher. Mm-hmm. And I didn't want that. But, I was beat down and I had to wait a year anyways to start the program again. So what do I do? Right. So I took education classes and I was like, I just don't love it, right? And I was working for a radio station at the time. And the guy said, you're really good at this. You should keep pursuing this. This could be your calling. Mm-hmm. So I moved in with my best friend in Lubbock and went to Texas Tech for a year.
Okay. Studying
communications. And the classes were fun, but there was just something in me saying, no, this isn't what you're called for. You're called for nursing. And to jump back just a little bit, with those times I was in Oklahoma at that other school, I had come home for the holidays and had been assaulted while I was home by a close friend. And so when I went back, my life consisted of being with my friends and working at Joe's Crab Shack and drinking too much alcohol. I'll be 100% honest. So, I didn't know how to prioritize. And that's why another thing with going home, that I couldn't do that around my home. Yeah. I was a preacher's kid. My dad was still actively a minister. There was no way I could have done that lifestyle at home. And that's partially why I went home. But when I moved to Lubbock, I told my best friend, I'm like, something's wrong. I love this information and I love these classes, but this is not, there's something missing. I really think I need nursing. So I reached out to a school there, and they told me, well, you would have to take all these extra classes to get into our RN program, but you can take our LVN program and not have to take any of those. And then you could just transition. I'm like, sweet, awesome. So I got on board with the LVN program, and the only support I had was my best friend that I lived with, and my mom, and one of my two sisters. And she's one I wasn't super close with. We didn't spend a whole lot of time talking at that point. Okay. And oddly enough, I flew through that program with all A's and B's. I was chosen as the preceptor to teach the next classes coming in how to do their clinicals. And when I graduated, I actually graduated with the hospital having already offered me a job. And the guy who had been my boss got up at our graduation and gave me a special award that only one person wins, and it came with a bonus check of like $500 or something like that. Nice. And I could not believe it. I didn't even think they said my name. Somebody had to tell me, hey, you need to go up there. They're trying to give you this, because he had been the boss of one of my classmates for years. So I was sure it would be her, that got anything from the hospital. But their award was saying, hey, you represent everything we want in a nurse and want our hospital to have. And this is why we are giving you this. So that
what an honor. Good for you, Becca. That is so great.
It was pretty crazy.
What cool confirmation after all of these hurdles and all of these roadblocks, essentially, that this was time, this was your time, and this was exactly where you were supposed to be.
Right.
If you had any doubts, even though you kept coming back, it was like, here, Becca, this is for you, and this is exactly what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, and then those same stinking hurdles came back when I tried to get my RN. It was the same thing over and over again.
So a couple of people want to know how exactly you study, because they seem to feel that they relate to you, and so they want to know how it is that you study and actually have succeeded. Do you have any pointers?
Sure. So in that program, in that LVN program, the biggest class, of course, that we struggled with was pharmacology, because it's so much information, right? You've got to know so many different things. And the first thing I always do is I always find a group, and it's not necessarily because I just want a group of people, but it's that other people will hold me accountable for learning the information. I can't just sit at my house and watch Netflix and pretend like I studied. Okay. I meet with these people and they hold me accountable, but then the things I don't understand, they understood, or vice versa. But one thing we found with pharmacology is we actually made a memory game out of it, which is kind of silly, but we printed out every single drug in black and white paper, because our tests were paper at that point. Every interaction, everything we had to know for each drug, and we cut them into strips, and we put the answer on the back real small so you couldn't see it. But then you had to literally find and match what side effects went with what drug, and it just kept you engaged in it. But then you saw it in the black and white. That was the test. So it was easy to pick that list out of your answers to match. But I was also one who would take notes on the PowerPoint and highlight in the book. But I never really went back to the book. I always went back to my PowerPoint. And one thing I had been taught was if you read it out loud and you write it, writing it makes it go into your memory. So I would rewrite every single slide and read it out loud. And that seemed to help me, besides the group itself. But the group was the biggest thing. But like I was saying, with the study groups, it was always devastating to be the one who's teaching everybody and really knows it, and then turn around and I can't pass, but they can.
Right.
And so when I got married, I moved back to New Mexico from Texas, tried the school in Clovis. It was not successful. My husband was active duty, so we transferred to Idaho.
Okay.
In Idaho, they didn't have any schools where I could do LVN to RN. I had to start all over, regardless.
Oh my God.
So I enrolled at a school that I could do it the quickest, and it was ITT Tech.
Okay.
I did a whole year at ITT Tech and got all A's in every class. So that whole first year, I did really well. And then right before I was supposed to start again for my last year, they closed the school down completely. And luckily, Nightingale College reached out to us and said, hey, we know that your school shut down. We know most of the schools won't take their credits. We will take them all. You can come here. We will take them all. They were completely 100% online except for your clinicals and your like labs.
Okay.
So I had to drive 2+ hours for clinicals and labs.
Wow.
But all of the testing and stuff was all computer.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what worked out for me for this school was this school did not say, okay, you're going to have 5 tests this week, 1 in pharm, 1 in med surg. You know, it wasn't overwhelming exams. It was, let's prepare you.
College.
Correct.
And the way that they schedule things, right? Okay, Thomas,
Correct.
hopefully she's going to answer this question. Thomas wanted to know what helped you get through Nightingale College.
Right. This will be exactly it. So the way that they handle their school was you did a bunch of, people thought it was annoying, okay, but questions and answers just like you would do NCLEX prep all week long. No exams except for a midterm and a final.
Ew.
And then you did clinicals. So you didn't have those weekly exams, which is where I struggled, right?
Right.
So I was constantly doing the practice questions, and with Nightingale, you could do the practice questions over and over and over till you made 100.
Okay.
So it's up to you what kind of grade you're going to see is how much work are you willing to put into it. So I would take those tests over and over until I understood why it was the answer it was.
Yeah.
And what can I do to make that 100 because I want to succeed in this program. And I did that every single week, and I asked our clinical instructors, always said, bring 2 questions into clinicals that you're going over that you don't understand in your theory.
Okay.
So we brought those questions in, we talked to them at length, and we understood what was going on, and we would act out scenarios to make us understand better. Why is this what it is? And so I remember my very last final exam, they give you 2 tries. You get to take it. If you bomb it, you get 1 more shot, and they average the grades together.
Okay.
So I was terrified to take this final exam because I knew my past, right? My past was fail, 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 fail. How do I get past that? And I talked to my clinical instructor, and she goes, Becca, they let you have 1 thing to drink while you're taking that exam. Put some wine in a glass, drink it, and when you don't know something, close your eyes, take a sip, and go with your gut. I filled the biggest wine glass I possibly could to the brim of wine just to calm my nerves. And every time I didn't know an answer, I closed my eyes, I took a sip, and I went with my gut, and I passed it first try. Yay! And I couldn't believe it. And so the way Nightingale works is it's a bunch of different places, okay? So it would be like Twin Falls, Idaho, Ogden, Utah, Boise, all these different places, and you only knew your clinical instructor. That's the only teacher you actually knew.
Okay.
Like personally, if that makes sense.
Right.
And so just like what happened in LVN school, I'm sitting at graduation. My friends and I went down, all of us from ITT Tech in a line, together. And I'm bored out of my ever-loving mind during graduation. And it sounded like they're giving like a staff award.
Okay.
To a staff member, like the best teacher or clinical instructor or whatever. And then once again, They said my name and I didn't hear it. And out of all of the cohorts, they chose me as the who represented the school the best. And my clinical instructor wrote like a 5-page letter saying why I deserved this award.
Wow.
And so it just reaffirmed, like, this is exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. This is where I'm supposed to be. And so I've taken that with me. And when I came to my bachelor's through Grand Canyon's all writing papers. That's really all they are.
Okay.
But I refused to get below an A. I'm going to do whatever I can to get an A. And so from both that RN program and my BSN, both of them I finished with a 4.0. And that helped me understand, yes, I had this in me the whole time, even though I felt defeated, even though everybody told me to quit, even though I had such a small support system thinking I couldn't do this. I just did it.
That's amazing. So I don't know who asked, someone asked. What exactly did you do in terms of strategy to help you become more confident with these computer style testing and the NCLEX and things of that nature? It sounds like Nightingale really prepared you because it was all computerized testing.
Correct. And I had one instructor in Clovis actually tell me, you struggle when it's on the computer, but you're fine when it's on paper. They will give you one sheet of scratch paper for your dosage calculations, etc.
Okay.
Take that scratch paper, cover everything up on the computer, and read the question out loud, but not out loud where people can hear you. Like whisper it to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And before you ever even see the answers, answer it in your head.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think you're going to see in the key? And then go one answer at a time. So you would hold up your thing, you'd go down to A. Does that match anything you were thinking? No. Go down to B. Does that match anything you were thinking? Kind of. Okay. Does C match anything you're thinking? No. Does D? Kind of. Okay, you've narrowed it down to 2. Which one really felt like that's exactly what came to your head?
Yep.
And take it that way. And I did that for a little while. And that really helped, but then it built up that confidence. I do know what I'm thinking. I do know what's going on. And I try to put it in a scenario, not just on paper. Okay, I'm in the hospital. This patient has this. What am I going to do first? Oh, duh. I'm not going to, call a code. I'm going to check the patient. Just because the monitor's going off doesn't mean anything. First check the patient, then call the code, And I think that was more helpful because sometimes you see something like call the doctor or get your RN or whoever on your answers and you're like, oh, that's it. I always do that first. But you don't ever think about, no, look at your patient first. What do you see on your patient? Then do those other things.
That's great advice. So answer the question before you ever read the other options.
Correct.
Before you read any of the options, and then a process of elimination, just like you're taught. I love that. That's amazing. And honestly, it's not that you ever had a period of time that you couldn't answer computerized tested questions. It was a mental block for you, much like many of us create our own mind. We create this battle for ourselves. And if you can just overcome the fact that this is not reality and what you've been telling yourself all of these years of triumph, that was reality. It's not. Look at the end result, right? You are amazing. Right. And I am all on board with the study groups 110%. If you can teach it, you really know it. And I love that you always kept going back to communication is the key. I need to let my instructors know that this is my history. I need to let my instructors know that I feel like I struggle with computerized testing and that I do better on paper testing, because then they know how to guide you and how to build you up. If you never tell anybody, they don't know. Exactly. And that's the thing. The LVN school I went to was considered the boot camp of all nursing schools, is what it was known around the area. And one instructor in particular ingrained this in my brain, which I already had part of that. But she said, I am not willing to help you if you're not willing to come to me and tell me you need it. Mm-hmm. I might see you're failing my class, but that doesn't mean I'm going to reach out to you and say, what can I do to help you? Yeah. If you aren't adult enough to come to me and say, hey, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I don't know why I'm getting these grades I'm getting. What can I do better?
she's not going to help you. And so that's always been my thing. If you get to know your instructor, you can feel confident and comfortable talking to them and saying, hey, I don't know why I can't do this. I can sit here and recite everything you lectured us about, but I cannot put it on this paper. What am I doing? How can I put it on this paper? And how can I go about doing the next thing?
Absolutely. I love all of that. Do you have any other advice or do you have any more of your short story that you wanted to share?
I mean, not specifically. I just, like I said, my whole history is fail. And I always worry that the nurses that I work with, if they knew that it took me forever to get through nursing school because I failed so much, will think less of me as a nurse. That I won't be as good because I couldn't get through nursing school or I couldn't get through the things that they got through. But I will tell you, I graduated with people who did much better than me in LVN school and probably even in RN school. And my passion at the bedside and to do things correctly in the clinical setting and me focusing a lot of my energy at the time at clinicals because that's what I was good at, I am confident that I know how to take care of patients at the bedside. I might have sucked at med-surg. I might have sucked at pharmacology. But when I'm actually putting it into practice, that's where I exceed. And there are those people who did really good on book smarts and could not function in the clinical setting. They just couldn't.
Yeah.
And so I think that we tend to get in our own heads about what other people are going to think. And I am a huge person of that if you think I'm not good enough, then I'm not good enough. That's just it. I'm done. Yeah. But I've had to teach myself that I know what I'm doing and I am not scared to ask questions.
Mm-hmm.
If you're scared to ask questions, you're never going to get anywhere. So in clinicals, even if I felt like I've put in 100 Foleys, I don't need to ask questions. I'll ask that nurse why she does it the way she does it. Maybe something better. Maybe she has a better technique than I do. Maybe, there's always room to grow and listen and learn. And even if they're a newer nurse than you, you can still learn from them because they learned differently than you were taught.
Uh-huh.
But there's always growth. And so my biggest advice to anybody is be confident in who you are, but don't be afraid to ask questions because you don't know everything. And there might be a better way to do things.
Mm-hmm. I like that. Be confident in who you are, but never too proud to learn something new, right?
Correct. Exactly.
I love that phrase too. So, Brittany, you can do this. She relates a lot to everything that you said. And, she did it. You can do it. It's amazing. I love all of your input and advice. Do you mind if I share my story? I've never verbally shared it before.
No, not at all.
All right. So I'm getting sweaty palms just thinking about verbalizing it. How ridiculous.
You got it.
I know so many of you all struggle in nursing school. And once I got to nursing school and passed all of that prerequisite headache that I didn't care anything about music appreciation and all of the stupid things that I was required to take to get into nursing school. I graduated from UNM. Everyone's a Lobo. Woof, woof, woof. So I got in there and I was totally in my element. I loved it. I was a CNA beforehand. I was a CNA all through nursing school. And I was where I was meant to be. I just knew it. Straight A's. I was in my the semester before my very last semester of nursing school. We were graduating the following semester. And we had family and children's class. It was one of those classes that I felt like it was a waste of time. We had to do this huge project where we went into a family's home and as a student critiqued them and gave them teaching about their family. Okay? Can you see how this is frustrating and dumb? Okay. Yeah. So here we are. I'm paired with this family who has, if I remember correctly, it was 3 boys, and one of them may have been on the spectrum, or maybe just their parenting style just led him to be more escalated and rambunctious, or maybe he was just a super rambunctious kid. I don't know. But the other 2 seemed a little bit more even keel. But anyway, here I am giving this, I'm not a parent, by the way, at the time, giving this mom parenting advice, okay? And I have to do a scheduled number of visits in the home. Well, long story short, they kept canceling on me, or they wouldn't be home at the time that they had scheduled for me to be there. Well, long story longer, I ended up telling my clinical instructor, or my teacher at the time in family and children's class. I told her, I said, I am having trouble accomplishing these visits. This family is super busy, and every time I schedule, something happens. They cancel or they're not there. Oh, okay, well, just keep trying. Just keep trying. I tell her again, hey, I'm still struggling. Just keep trying to. There was no solution, right? So I did a phone visit. And instead of logging it as a phone visit on my write-up, I logged it as an in-home visit. And I asked her on the phone, like, okay, who else there, and got the details, but I typed it up as though I was physically there. I just, in the comment, just said, in home this date, rather than being transparent and saying that I had done a phone visit due to scheduling conflict, which would, in hindsight, would have been,
right,
duh, right? But I just thought, well, this will just be fine. It's fine. I did this home visit, a phone visit via home visit, and it'll be fine. Well, I didn't know that the family was going to get a copy of our final paper. I had no idea. Had I known, of course, it would have been very different. And had I known and been forthcoming and completely transparent, I would have logged these failed attempts, which I also didn't do. So at the end of the semester, I had finished, got straight A's as normal, on to my senior semester and moving forward. And several people had been failed out of our cohort at that point. And my study group was all strong. We were moving on. Well, I got called into the office on our break. It was a really short, 2-week break or something. Mm-hmm. And I got called into the office, and I get in there thinking like, what, right? And they're like, so about this paper. And I was just like, yeah, I did that. I didn't go into the house. I did a phone visit instead of a home visit, and I should have logged it right. And they're like, we're kicking you out of the program. I was devastated, absolutely devastated. And I'm like, but you can't do that. And they're like, yeah, right here in this contract, it says you're not going to cheat, right? And I'm like, but I didn't cheat. Yeah, you did actually. But that's my fight. I didn't cheat. I just logged it as a phone visit instead of a home visit. And they're like, no, this isn't okay. You got an F for this class. My very first F ever in my life. And I am like crumbled. Like my ego is shot. My straight A is blown. And I just, of course, I'm like, now what? What do I do? There goes my cohort. There goes my study group.
Your friends, yeah.
And I just thought, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? I'm devastated. Well, after I walked out, I was like, please don't kick me out. So I had put up enough, I don't know, said enough kind words and maybe begged for forgiveness. I'm not sure. I don't remember at that point. I just like blacked out really. I leave and I am devastated and I feel humiliated. And I would say like, I'm a person of character. I'm honest, all of these things. And here I am. I lied. I was dishonest. And now I have an F. And now I have to tell everybody why I'm not moving on in nursing school. Right. So here I go. They called me a few hours later and they said that they were going to let me stay in the program, but I had to take an entire semester off and just take family and children's. That was the only class I was going to take because I had passed everything else. So I took that class again and was paired with a medically fragile child and a single mom. And that seemed like I could actually help them. But it was, again, a waste of time. Passed the class and moved along with a different cohort. So now I'm like 2 semesters behind that, my class. And it was a very good eye opener for me. I learned a lot about myself. And communication is key. Like, you have to be open and honest with your instructors. Nobody knows what
Absolutely.
you're going through, right?
Right. Well, funny thing about your story is during that LVN program, our very last, they didn't do semesters per se, but our very last time, my study group and I, we were all assigned for our final like clinical simulation. We had to do book work and then we had to go in and do the sim. Okay. And the book work was a book that we weren't actually even assigned as a textbook. They just randomly like threw this CD-ROM and book at us and said, you need to do these chapters or something. Okay. So we didn't have this book. We had to get online and buy it. Well, one of the girls in my group bought the wrong version of the book.
Okay. And
as a study group, we always got together and did everything together, right? And so we're like, well, I got the right book. Why don't we just hook it up to my laptop? We'll all watch it. We'll all do our workbook pages together. No big deal, right? Well, little did I know that every single CD-ROM came with different like vital signs and different little things, tweaks in there. Oh. And so our whole group got pulled in right before graduation, and we were all told that we plagiarized our homework.
Wow.
And my whole world like completely shattered, right? I'm like, there's no way. And so my punishment for that, because they weren't going to kick us out because we explained everything, was I wasn't allowed to go to these specialty clinicals anymore, like wound care clinics and stuff like that. I had to go back to the floor on the hospital that nobody liked for 2 weeks. Well, it turns out that floor, I got in really good with those nurses. That's who hired me for my job, and that's who gave me the award for the hospital.
That's amazing.
The 2 weeks I was stuck on the floor nobody wanted to be at was my punishment, and it actually got me the biggest reward. So it was scary and it was sucky, but it came out good. And just like yours, I mean, you're doing awesome things. You've got this whole page where you're supporting so many people, and I think that's incredible. Mm-hmm. And it all started with something so scary for you at the time, and then you made it right on through.
Right. And you know, it's funny because I had, as a tech or as a CNA all through nursing school, I had gone to the pediatric floors off and on. Well, when I was paired the second time in family and children's class, I was paired with a special needs child. And it was then when I realized my passion for that line of work. And so in the following semester, when I got to do my capstone, I requested pediatrics. And I think I kind of had a feeling I wanted to go pediatrics, but then I realized that these special needs children were really like, this is something that I have a passion for. And so I ended up doing my capstone in pediatrics and then being hired there. So would that all have worked so fluidly had that bump never happened? Maybe not.
Right. Exactly.
So, to all of you who are struggling, just know that you're right where you should be. Don't second guess it. Work harder, change your study habits or whatever it is that's causing you to stumble. And better next time, communicate with people that can help you.
Exactly.
For sure. So if you could go back and give yourself some advice during nursing school, what would it be?
Well, part of it would be suck it up, buttercup, and do the work. Stop just trying to, be the social person, because that's who I am. I always like to spend time with friends. And if you're going to the movies and I have a test tomorrow, I'd rather go to the movies with you than worry about this stupid test, right? But I think my biggest hurdle was with my support system telling me maybe this isn't you, and that gets in your head. So then you have conflicting ideas in your head. Maybe that I'm not meant to do this. Maybe I am. So I think for me, my advice would be, if you know this is what you want to do, don't let anybody else tell you you can or you can't. Prove that you can, get it done, and do the very best you can. And whatever comes of that, God will make it where you need to be.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that the group overall is very encouraging when someone brings I've failed this, I'm struggling with this, X, Y, and Z. I rarely hear somebody or see somebody talk about, well, maybe this just isn't for you. Because let's be honest, like you were saying, Becca, just because you struggle in the classroom doesn't mean you're not meant to be an amazing nurse.
Right.
I went to school with some people in my cohort, my initial cohort, who were brainiacs. Like they could fly through any test, straight A's, like no studying. I didn't read the book. That was not my ammo. My ammo was charts, bullet points, and back to my notes. And so if I tried to read, it all went in one ear, out the other, and never stuck in the middle, ever. So I just knew that wasn't my way of learning. And so I would teach. But these people, like, they would literally read the book and it would all just be right here and they could like recite everything to you. But then in the clinical setting, they were so awkward. And I'm not saying that if you're a brainiac, you can't be amazing at the bedside. That's not it.
Absolutely. No, I get it. Yeah.
But for those of you that are struggling in the classroom, like, don't for 1 second discredit your ability to be amazing at the bedside and just working for your patients. So
absolutely. One thing that I can say on my studying back when we were talking about how I did things, I know it sounds super silly, but the books that are like Nursing Made Easy, blah, 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 some of those actually helped me understand it more, especially the ones that are made incredibly visual. Because then you can actually see and understand. And I bought coloring books that are anatomy so I can understand what goes where. And I'm just very hands-on. That's why I learned best in the clinical setting, because I can see it, I understand it. You just telling me doesn't tell me anything.
Absolutely.
I need to do it.
I actually have a book that I read through just a couple of months ago because one of our students here in the group had recommended it. And I thought, I want to know what it is that's in that book because I want to read it for myself and be able to point students in the right direction. So I'm going to grab it so that I can share it with you guys. Here's the book. The author, Maureen, is actually part of our Tribe RN group. It's Nursing School Thrive Guide. She really lays out the organization and just makes steps. It's not about passing nursing school. That's not what her book is about. She actually runs a Facebook group called Straight A Nursing. And anyway, she puts things so simply and she just gives such great tips and advice in this book. So if you guys are struggling and you're in this place where you're just overwhelmed, she gives great organizational and study group advice and things of that nature in this book. And it's short and it's an easy toilet read if that's your thing.
Well, and I know we talked about, the outside people telling us, well, maybe you're not meant to do that. Maybe you're not meant to do that. And that's the great thing about this Facebook group as a whole, this tribe, is there are nurses or nursing students who have been through the gutter with the same kind of things you have. My dad and my sister, my dad's a minister. My sister's a teacher. Very, very different education styles. Mm-hmm. They have no idea what nursing school is like. And you could try to describe it all day long, but they don't get it. And they just see, well, you suck at the test, so why don't you do something that you wouldn't suck at? And so I think we tend to think, well, they're my support group, so they know more about me, so they know. But nursing is so, so different. And I think this group provides the feedback you actually need to hear from other nurses or people who are in the same shoes as you right now, as opposed to people who just see from the outside and don't really know what it's like. It's like you could tell somebody in the military, well, you shot that gun wrong. Well, you don't know. You weren't in that spot. You know what I mean? Like something silly. So
absolutely. So if any of you are out there, you're listening, you're struggling, just know if this is the path you want to be on and nursing is what you feel called to do, don't give up.
Absolutely. And I am totally open. If anybody ever wants to talk to me personally and get advice, feel free to reach out to me on the Facebook page. I would love to help anybody who wants it.
Awesome. Sounds great. Thank you so much for joining us, Becca. I appreciate
Thank you for having me.
Your heart and your love for nursing.
Thank you so much.
Have a great day, guys.